So our hope is this is the final bit of adjustment to the budget request.
So what I have in front of you is the general fund ending cash balance report for 11/28/16. And on the first page, at the very bottom, we have the supplementals that are still yet to be completed. We're on schedule for the next hearing on December 13th to have those items identified. For what they are the corrections retro of $194,000, $200,000 for outsourcing. We had $125,000 for salaries and benefits that at our meeting on Wednesday we decided not to include. The sheriff's office is going to delay hiring, and that will offer them the opportunity to not reduce the $125,000. Include the $25,000 for the fingerprint machine and $43,000 for the juvenile department's retro. That brings our adjusted ending fund balance to $3,185,379. With unexpended budget authority and the unanticipated budget revenue, that would bring it up just around $6 million. Less 13th month expenditures will bring it to around $5,465,000. The 9% reserve gives us a $2 million unreserved ending fund cash balance. If we carry the $5,500,000 forward into the 2017 budget, 2017's preliminary budget had revenues of $30,104,624, had expenditures budgeted of $38,021,873. That's a negative shortfall of $7,917,250 that we started the budget conversation with. We've made adjustments to revenues. We've talked about those that are in groups A and B. New budget adjustments are in Group C, which was to add $120,000 worth of additional traffic diversion funding to the traffic diversion out of the roads, making that a total of $1,500,000. By the way, that's going to require an addition to the certification of levies, because that was we levied at $1,380,000. So we're going to need to recertify the levy at $1,500,000 for traffic diversion.
Is that going to affect anything on with the count with the city, any of that stuff?
No, that's a small D, that's an internal traffic diversion. Those are diversions out of road dollars into current expense, general fund dollars. We added $30,000 of revenue for the electronic home monitoring program under the sheriff's office. They are anticipating with the EHM program being able to charge for the a certain number of the electronic home monitoring devices, and they'll be able to recoup some of the costs that they would incur. So they're estimating $36,500 of costs, and they're anticipating recovering about $30,000 worth of those costs and revenues, which had not been budgeted for in the preliminary budget. So that's adding $30,000. We also talked about transferring money from the mental health tax.
But I thought it was 50 and 50. It says 250.
50 and 50
for to cover what was already in there, and an additional 50 on top of that for them to bring in extra hours.
Well, they're asking $210,000 for extra hours for the nursing program. And this is recovering $50,000 more than the $210 they're asking for, so that's the $260,000.
I'm not sure that we can sustain that though.
We can sustain it for next year. for 2017 by taking it out of the mental health tax as ending fund balance, because it has
No.
available funding. For 2017, we're going to need, 2018, we'll need to take a look at the mental health tax expenditures in its entirety, and whether or not this fits into that program and can be sustained going forward.
Do you know what that brings the balance down to and versus our obligations, contractual obligations?
Contractual obligations are budgeted at 500,000, but I believe it's 375, and don't hold me to that, is what they've actually contracted. So there is some money available in the contracted obligation in that we budgeted more than what we have committed to. But I simply took it out of ending fund balance in anticipation of them spending what they budgeted as far as contracted dollars are concerned.
And then do you know?
So there's $125,000 available in contracted dollars. And then we would need to revisit this entire, the entire cost of that program in 2018 relative to the cost to cover nursing.
And do you know what that brings the end fund balance down to?
I think it was it was just under $1 million. It's like $1.2 million now, it would be just under $1 million. Some of the things that we have talked about that I haven't put dollars to, because either we haven't confirmed that we want to do this, or we don't have or know the dollar amount. So those are, and it's been brought up a few times, is to sell county property. How much? When do we budget for it? That's a question mark. The other one was, that was brought forward, was to not put a supplemental forward for the fingerprint machine, but rather to ask that the department pay for that out of unexpended budget authority. Another was to, and this is part of the conversation on the expenditure side, but it's a combination of two. There are revenues available that can be used from revisiting the DCD revenue. A comment was made that they can increase their revenues, that they're budgeting conservatively. They also want to visit increasing their rates, which would add additional revenue to the 2017 budget. The expectation is, however, that DCD would use that to purchase a software program that they need. And so we have revenues available. Do we use it to purchase software, or do we use it to balance the budget? That's the question for the commission.
Well, can we balance the budget without it? It looks like we can, because you don't have it included here.
Well, the budget right now says that we're at reserve of 9%,
Yes.
which is marginal. So we have pressures on that. Being that close to the reserve is uncomfortable. We have, on the expenditure side, we have CBAs that we haven't included into the conversation. We have other pressures in that the unexpended budget authority and unanticipated revenues are variable, and we may not capture as much as we think we might. So those are the two major pressures on next year's ending fund balance, and that has not been taken into consideration yet. Balancing the budget to exactly the 9%, $3,000 over, is a concern. So those are the revenue sides. Let's take a quick look at the expenditure sides. Again, looking at the expenditures as we go down, we've discussed all of these items. If we get down to the where I put back reduced revenues by putting negatives there, we have agreed that the prosecutor's office admin costs can be reduced by $25,000. I have put in what would be a delaying of the prosecutor's new hire until March.
Which, by the way, we need to give an extra thank you to the prosecutor. This came late after everybody had met. The prosecutor came in, we were still running short. We asked him if he could delay a hire in order to save us $15,000, and I just wanted you to know that he gave that up so that we could get to where we're at. On addition of the 25 he came in and gave up before that. So I just want you to know that, you know, that was a way of really kicking in to help as a team, and I appreciate it. Go ahead, sorry.
The third item is a delay in the alternative sentencing until July. There is some capital costs that are needed that are not included in this either for that to be completed. They're not material, we don't know what they are, and don't even have a guess at what they might be, so that's why they're not being included in here, but that's another item for consideration on the ending fund balance pressure. So that reduces by 110,000 expenditures, eliminating the sheriff's replacement vehicles for this year, for 2017, of 375,000, reducing the increase in overtime request for the sheriff's office of 121,232, and reducing the sheriff's salary to what the proposal was based on the elected officials' briefings that the commission put forward, to put the electeds at 95% of the commissioners and the sheriff at 22% above the electeds. That would reduce their budgeted salary for the sheriff's office. Here again, some of the items that are not in consideration is the $72,000 of cost for the software in DCD, proposing $108,000 potentially of additional revenue. An item is to put a hiring freeze for unfilled, terminated, resignated, or retired positions. Another item is to reduce the public health's request for a new vehicle. I had that conversation with Cindy this morning. They're on schedule for a new replacement vehicle. The question is whether we have to have it, in the sense that the transmission's bad on the vehicle, or it needs to be retired, or can we get another year out of the current vehicle that we have. It has I believe she said 140,000 miles on it. It's not like the sheriff's office vehicle where once it gets up to those kinds of miles, it becomes a safety
Is this perfectly
concern.
fine now, or is there any?
That's what my question is, and she hasn't determined. So that's why that's not in there to be taken out. That's still an open item. And then just a placeholder for the fact that there are costs for the CBAs that are in negotiations that aren't being considered in this budget. At this point in time, what it does is it brings after adjusting for unexpended and unanticipated and 13th month, it brings the ending fund balance to our 9% reserve, $3,248 above that. So from the last one, which was $1,468,000, I believe, out of balance, $1,436,000. This has recaptured $1,400,000 worth of either additional revenue and or additional cuts.
Let me ask you a question on the reduce the hiring freeze. Do you have a number that they put in?
No, I am getting one, but I don't have a number for that at the moment.
And how long would that be? 6 months?
It would depend on what we have as unfilled positions. I don't think we have that many.
But at the same time, without discussing with the electeds and stuff, that could be actually dangerous just to
It could be.
do. And I don't, yeah, okay, let's look past
Yeah,
that.
it could be, and I just, that's in there for conversation and for discussion. Implementing that would be much more of an in-depth conversation with each of the electeds, with each of the
It would
departments,
be a case by case basis.
basically.
And without
Information, you can really make the
Yeah,
decision.
and so I wanted to put those numbers in. 'cause-
That's why I left it.
Yeah, I can't, I have a comment on one of the things that are in here though. After we had that, remember I had that meeting with the sheriff's department and stuff, we're asking them, we looked over their budget pretty well, and, you know, there's still some issues and discussions on what capacity there even is there. After going through all that with them, I really don't wanna make a recommendation of asking them to find another $35,000. That needs to come out, that needs to be,
for fingerprint machine.
yeah. I just say.
And my comment on that was, we could ask them to take it out of what they have available, or, and if we do that, then it just reduces our unexpended budget authority dollar amount.
And I put a reminder, because the way it came out was, we were looking at the numbers that said that there was capacity, but there was still a disagreement whether or not there was capacity. So there was an offer up from the sheriff's department to offset some of that by doing the hiring, holding off on the hiring. If you have a good mix of the two, there may not be that money, I don't even want to, so I'd rather not gamble with that.
Well, it's a balanced budget, it gives us absolutely no breathing room, which is a function of, we had multiple, it's a function of managing within the budget, which is essential. We did have multiple department heads and elected officials say they may be coming to us for budget supplementals. I would caution that by balancing the budget, with the $3 million or $3,000, a budget supplemental shouldn't even be considered. I think that it's most important that everybody balance or manage within the budget. And I'm okay with this going forward with that very small.
Like to still have a little bit, I am too, but, you know, let's look at another option though, on trying to recoup a few more bucks in the front end. Did you take the time and look at the ability for REIT and for the parks and, for our
Yes,
infrastructure?
there are potentially dollars available for unanticipated major repairs out of REIT, but in that definition, they're unanticipated. So I would recommend that we use the REIT fund to fund those unanticipated dollars, or just transfer them into facilities as we need them. So if we have an emergent elevator repair like we have this year, we could use REIT dollars.
But there's none we can capture right now though, because that's what I was asking. 'Cause
Yeah.
if we
No,
can
there is-
capture 25 or 50 on the mental health tax and the thing for the nursing. As I said, I myself, I had a different number when we were discussing it. And, you know, instead, we're actually giving them more, I have no problem with, that's that much out of the tax, we're actually still giving them the 210. I was thinking we're gonna give them basically an additional 60,000 for nursing, and then offset it on the other side to also charge out of the mental health tax an additional $50,000-$60,000 to, for supplanting money.
We can't use it for planting, but for mental health recoverable costs.
Yes, well,
Yes, but then that drops the reserve to below by $200,000.
but it's money in, money out, hasn't that?
Because it's coming out of special funds going into current expense. So if we drop the current expense revenue side from 260 to 60.
How much of mental health is going into the current expense side? Are we?
200 and...
Out of the 260.
Out of the 260, all of it's going into current expense. To cover the cost
But
of
we're,
nursing
but
increase.
we're doing an increase, we're granting an increase of 210.
Correct.
That is not, you know, that's a decision.
Correct.
So that means it's, you know, that 210 is money in, money out. It was the 50,000, that's the difference.
Correct.
And see,
50,000 increase is the difference.
Yes.
So you can eliminate the nursing increase by 200,000 and eliminate the need to do a $260,000 transfer. That's basically a $50,000 negative impact to the ending fund balance. If you eliminate just the transfer, that's a $260,000 impact to the ending fund balance.
Yeah.
And still go ahead with the
No,
nursing.
but yeah, but I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about if you weren't going ahead with the nursing, you weren't.
Right.
But if you
That
only,
would- that would be a $50,000.
if you only went ahead with $110,000 in nursing instead of $210,000 in nursing, that's what I'm talking about, the money in, money out with the 50,000. for-
And that's
on
that's
top
your
of the
decision,
160,000.
how much of an increase,
Or
because
200,000 that way, but,
because we have the nursing increase impact at 210,000.
yeah.
So you can decide to
So
reduce
the
that.
So the 50,000 additionals are to even, are to reduce the current expenditure?
Mhm.
Correct. And the conversation with the sheriff's office was that in their past practice, the majority of the nursing cost in the jail is related to some sort of mental health issue. And they're available to be reimbursed from the mental health tax fund.
Because we're making, general decisions, move things forward now, I'm thinking in my head, I don't like the idea of the expansion of those dollars, but that gentleman that they hired.
Expansion of the amount of money
Yes,
spent
I didn't-
on jail and nursing.
Yes.
I need a full
Yeah.
sentence so that I can
Yeah.
follow you.
Well, and the thing is, I'm thinking in my head though, is that gentleman, Chief Hansen, pretty smart man, he may find a way to save that back, or a big part of it back, so I guess I will be okay with that.
Yeah, in the conversation, he thought there were opportunities that they can do to mitigate those cost increases, as well as improvements in efficiency.
And that may eventually roll over into being able to bring on the CSOs for the alternative sentencing earlier. We may have that discussion, so, okay, so I'm okay with it.
And what would be your barometer for bringing that on sooner?
If they can show us, remember, I did speak with myself, if they can come back and show us their savings in certain areas, that they have, $50,000, $100,000 that they don't have to utilize, and they're understanding that if they spend anything above this, they're gonna have to end up cutting, because we're not gonna have money for supplementals.
There's no supplemental money, people, I just really need you all together.
And that's what I'm saying, but if they're able to come back and show us they have savings, because this chief has some great ideas, I'd be willing personally to have a discussion about whether or not they could reutilize those savings, but I'd be willing to have that discussion with any elected or department head. If they can show us they can save this much out of their budget and they want to use it in another way, okay, knock yourself out, I'm good with that.
Okay,
So we're good as it stands?
I think we are. Commissioner, do you want?
We're good with moving it
Open
forward.
the floor for comment?
Go ahead, that's up to you.
Is there any comment or?
I have one quick clarification question. On the adoption, is it going to be bottom line the same way, or are we going to have bottom line by salary wages and bottom line by operations? Or do we have to deal with the 7 division?
I need you to understand, it's never been that way. Please, understand. It will be 2 bottom lines. Operations, and the other bottom line is wages and benefits. The ability to move between the divisions in the sheriff's department is still available as long as you stay within your total bottom line of wages and benefits and your total bottom line.
I need to know. Thank you.
I'm gonna piggyback on that. I made a request of the sheriff's department for them to send us a question on that specific issue so that the commission can literally send them something back saying that
Okay.
that's it.
Well, I had the 2 resolutions I brought forward last week, and we did pay for the extra $120,000 in nursing going to 10 to 8 hours by the savings we did in the hospital bills that we didn't pay for the last 2 years, because it went up $10,000 more a month for the last 2 years, and we were able to, with $100,000 less in the jail operating, pay for the extra 10-hour day nursing. The resolution for the budget adoption was changed only for the sheriff's office this year to show each division separately, and that's what Under Sheriff was asking, if we're going to go back to the 2015 adoption where it showed as one line like the auditors, or where every single division is going to be separated out.
We got our answer. Thank
Having
you.
looked at the 2016 resolution, I disagree with your interpretation.
So please just send us that letter so we can have that clarification, we get that done, and get that behind us. That will-
And we'll clarify it in writing. Any other comments or questions? Okay.
No layoffs.
No layoffs. 2% increases, 4% increases, COLAs, all kinds of things to try to maintain our competitiveness and maintain our qualified staff, which has been the priority, I think, of this commission, with me personally, to bring staffing levels up as much as we could, but most importantly, to bring salary levels up as much as we could. And it's bitten into our bottom line big time, which is why it is essential that we manage within our budget. I'm sorry, not everybody's here to do that.
And I want to actually clarify for the public at home on this one. It's not that we've been money drunk on paying our employees, and that's why this is happening. If anything, we've still been extremely tight, but we've had to do some changes just to maintain the quality of people we have, and we're just barely at that point. Matter of fact, there's some departments that will say that we're not at that point, because they've still lost some to the bigger counties, that's just the way it is. But, you know, that's part of the offset on this. You want to make sure in the county that you keep at least the minimum amount of employees necessary that are qualified in their positions to be able to do the job, or will cost the county that much more to try and make up for it, or the failures that has occurred in the past years that we've dealt with in audits and stuff like that because of certain areas not having the knowledge they should. So it's not something that we love to do.
But I think it's also important for people that when they start comparing the salary levels here, to also look at the tax base of the counties that they're.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Our tax base is nowhere near our neighbors,
But we still have the same pressures.
the same jobs.
Yeah. So thank you to all the elected officials and department heads that have found a way to get to this point, because if you remember, just a few weeks ago, we were far away from that. So thank you very much.
Yes, thank you very much for all the comments with the feds requests. Okay, is there anything else? So we'll have a hearing on Monday. The question is around the narrative. You and I
was
worked
good,
together
yeah.
over the last 3 years to try to get a narrative out. So
I thought about that last night.
didn't have to read through lines and lines.
There isn't much to put in, so it'll be a short one.
Perhaps, rather than going department by department, we'll just do a soft changes and a larger picture.
The pressures and the constraints and the issues. I will ask for that, absolutely. Thank you. And one of the other things, looking at that, one of the other things that are not in here, and I'll make a note
Is the
of that,
savings from
is
the-
the savings from any of the restructured financing. I haven't had enough time, having had that meeting yesterday,
That's fine.
to look at
All
what the
that gravy.
consideration, exactly,
All
what the
that gravy.
consideration in 2017 might be to current expense, because a lot of that is utilities and other areas.
It is, yeah.
So that's just great. That'll be
Yeah,
added.
I'm saying it won't be that great for
So
one
some of
year.
our bonds.
For the first year, it won't be.
Some of our bonds on current expense assets are paid out of the REIT as well, is that right?
That is correct. There is some there's either payment out of or contribution to out of REIT.
Okay,
So a big chunk of that is not going to hit current expense.
okay. Okay, so let's all hang tight in 2017 and
Basically, though, we're pretty close to where we were before. The problem we have last year, money-wise, the problem we have is there's nothing extra, there's no fluff in the budget to prepare for any type of $1 million thing as we've had last year. It's not, we cannot absorb that. So again, as Commissioner Jeffries clarified, and I'm already clarifying, when you come to us for supplementals, most likely, it's gonna have to come with a cut on somewhere else instead of a supplemental, because we don't have it. Unless something incredible happens.
Cross your fingers.
Pardon?
Cross your fingers.